In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Build the fence! Build the fence! Build the fence! That is not the cry of goat versus fish. That is the cry of ex-president Ronald D. Trump, who wants to come back to goat versus fish and try to take the presidency away from goat versus fish. Well, actually, the presidency is currently held by fish versus goat. But this versus goat versus fish is going to take the versus back for goat versus fish, and you're not going to build that fence. You're not going to build a fence for all the fence sitters to sit upon and not choose goat or fish. This is a versus of goat versus fish. Goat versus fish is the true versus. Ronald Trump, are you goat or are you fish? Once in a great versus, goat and fish are called upon to vote for goat or for fish. Goat, vote goat, and fish, vote fish. And it's a mighty versus, and it's a mighty versus. And the fence tries to spoil the versus, but never versus the fence. But some versus a fish votes for a goat. And some versus a goat votes for a fish. You just never know what's going to happen on goat versus fish. And that is why goat versus fish will go now to the Twitterverse to see what the fence is happening in this mid-verse election happening now to goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. The versus is between goat and fish. The versus is between goat and fish. The versus is between goat and fish. What the fence is going on out there in VSMERICA? Have you looked at VSMERICA in the recent verses? Have you looked at VSMERICA in the recent verses? It's going to fence with all this fencery, with not choosing goat or fish. VSMERICA, you need to choose goat or fish. You're not looking well. Ben Shapiro. We're really following those mid-verses now. Ben Shapiro says, candidate quality matters. Goat versus fish says, are you goat or fish? You talk a great deal, yet we have never heard you declare it. Goat or fish matters. Goat or fish matters, Ben Shapiro. Goat or fish matters. Goat or fish matters. Goat or fish matters. One retweet of goat versus fish. What says the retweet of goat versus fish? What says that retweet of goat versus fish? Bender Rodriguez says the silence is deafening. Pick a side, Ben Shapiro. Don't be a coward. Use the power of logic and intelligence, be they goat or fish, to make the correct, obvious choice. Bender Rodriguez, are you voting for goat or are you voting for fish? Eldergrown Goat, Fusa Mikes is voting goat. How many viewers do you typically have on your stream? 1 billion goat and fish. Just goat versus fish. 42069 viewers on average for goat versus fish. You're not looking well, VSMERICA. You're not looking well. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. We have been watching goat versus fish and goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. We have tried to clean ourselves of this fenciness that seems to be attaching itself to goat versus fish. Wherever we go, it's just following around goat versus fish. Well, we might be getting used to the verses. It could be goat versus fish. Could be goat versus fish. But it seems a bit fence. Seems a bit long on the fence to goat versus fish. But maybe we'll find out by the end of this verses if it's goat or fish. Maybe we'll find out if it's goat or fish. But in any verses, goat versus fish comes to you draped in VSMERICA, to bring only you the true followers of Goat vs. Fish, the true and trusted verses. And you know you can trust Goat vs. Fish, because Goat vs. Fish comes to you with presentation, with humility and presentation. In the verses of VSMERICA, so you know you can trust Goat vs. Fish. You know you can trust Goat vs. Fish. Because look at the verses, look at the verses! You can trust Goat vs. Fish, you can trust Goat vs. Fish. You can trust Goat vs. Fish. You trust Goat vs. Fish, don't you? You trust Goat vs. Fish. You should vote for Goat vs. Fish. But of course, Goat vs. Fish. You would vote for Goat vs. Fish, but you don't vote for this. You don't vote for this. It just is Goat vs. Fish. Stephen Chowder says, voters in Arizona, have you been experiencing any fishiness in booths? So it seems that Stephen Chowder has something against fish. Against fish? Maybe just wondering if you're experiencing fish? Stefan Chowder is wondering if you are experiencing fish at the voting booth. And Goat vs. Fish just has to wonder, oh, Goat vs. Fish, we experience fishiness, we experience votiness. Oh, my verses. Goat vs. Fish. Votiness, what is this? What? Oh, Goat vs. Fish. That fencing CPA. That fencing CPA did not type votiness instead of goatiness to Goat vs. Fish. Oh, my verses. Oh, my verses. Well, if you want to do Goat vs. Fish, you just have to Goat vs. Fish. We reverse the verses. Trust the CPA to do the verses of Goat vs. Fish. Trust the CPA to do the verses of Goat vs. Fish. Didn't see that verses. Are you experienced? Oh, Goat vs. Fish has experienced fishiness. Goat vs. Fish has experienced goatiness, but it is fenciness in the verses that concerns Goat vs. Fish. Are you anti-fish? Are you goat? Stefan Chowder, are you goat or fish? Oh, Drew John, we'll count your verses, it just won't count. And now a verse announcement from the Save VSMERICA pack. We have to save Goat vs. Fish, we have to save VSMERICA. Horns up, fins up, goat and fish. It's time to pull our verses together and save VSMERICA from the fences. From the fences that would betray our hard-versed versematic system for determining who triumphs, the goat or the fish. Power to the goat, power to the fish. Don't you want to raise your kids? Don't you want to raise your spawns in a VSMERICA where it's safe to be a goat and it's safe to be a fish? The fences are trying to take it away from you. The fences, they're trying to take VSMERICA away from you. They claim it's been VSMERICA all along, but you are a goat, you are a fish, and you know the one true verse is Goat vs. Fish. It's time to save Goat vs. Fish. It's time to save VSMERICA. A small contribution of even $1 VSMERICAN every verses can help save VSMERICA. You are the goat or fish that VSMERICA has been waiting for. Make your donation now to Goat vs. Fish. Make your donation now to Goat vs. Fish, because every verses helps Goat vs. Fish. Every verses helps the one true verses of Goat vs. Fish. VSMERICA is in your horns. VSMERICA is in your fins. Don't let the fence sitter take it away from you. Stand up for VSMERICA. Stand up and get off the fence. Don't sit on the fence. Vote goat, vote fish, vote goat, vote fish, and contribution to Goat vs. Fish. Right this very verses. Celebration, celebration, celebration. Are we really talking politics here, or do I have to go somewhere more toxic to have fun? Goat vs. Fish. Are we really talking politics on Goat vs. Fish? Are we really talking politics on Goat vs. Fish? In the beginning, there was Goat vs. Fish, the goat fish. And Goat vs. Fish said that there should be goat and that there should be fish. And since the beginning of Goat vs. Fish, Goat vs. Fish has declared every versus that everything is Goat vs. Fish. That everything is Goat vs. Fish. Do you believe in Goat vs. Fish? Did you believe in Goat vs. Fish? Everything, especially politics, is Goat vs. Fish. Are you voting for Goat? Are you voting for Fish? Goat and Fish. We're doing this versus. We're doing this versus with Goat vs. Fish. We're doing this versus with Goat vs. Fish. Doing this versus with Goat vs. Fish. Drew John with 100
Are
bits.
my donations to the VSMERICA PAC tax deductible?
Are the donations to the Save VSMERICA PAC tax deductible? Goat vs. Fish does not believe so. You can, of course, attempt to deduct them if you wish, but Goat vs. Fish